Hey, welcome to a special
video.
I guess there's audio as well, isn't there?
There's audio and
An
video.
audio and visual HR Happy Hour show.
I know.
Trish McFarlane, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
My name's Steve Boese. Great to be here.
Here at HR Tech Conference.
Fantastic event.
How many is this for us? I can't. It's too many to count, right? Too many to count.
Our 20th annual, and so we're super excited to be here. We're super excited to be doing a little HR Happy Hour fun as well in between other obligations. But good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Very good. It's been very busy. Obviously, being on the vendor side leading up to HR Tech Conference is a huge amount of time spent. So very excited to see how the week plays out.
Well, so far it's played out, I think, pretty well. We are just coming off our first official conference event, the Women in HR Tech Summit. You were a participant in that, which was fantastic.
I didn't go last year. I was at a different part of the event last year, and so I was very jealous that I wasn't at the Women in Technology. So, no, it was wonderful being able to talk with other ladies who are really kind of thinking about how they carry themselves in the workplace and how they can be more successful and how they can be more helpful to other women and mentoring. So, very rewarding.
And there's one other woman who is a participant in the Women in HR Tech Summit. I would love you to introduce, Trish, our special guest today.
I would. So our special guest is Christina Van Houten, and I work with Christina at Infor. She is the Senior Vice President over all of our product at Infor in product strategy and product management. So welcome.
Thanks.
Glad to have you here.
It's great to be here. I've always wanted to come to this event, and this is my first time.
I was going to say, more importantly than that, SVP nonsense is you were our closing keynote at the Women in HR Tech Summit.
What a great opportunity.
Oh my God, what a fantastic presentation. Maybe
such
just
a great opportunity.
For folks who are going to watch this, who weren't able to be here today with us at the event, maybe let's just talk a little bit about what you were talking about today and why you're so passionate about it.
So I just launched a book and a new website in the last 2 weeks, and the book is called Men at Work, A Career Girl's Guide to Navigating Male Archetypes. And it's the first of a series of 3 books that I've been working on over the last couple of years that are aimed at providing some really honest, candid advice to women in the workplace around factors that can really make or break your success that are often not addressed head on. And this was my first opportunity to speak about the book, and I was so heartened by the reaction, the women that came and spoke to me after, young women just emerging in their careers, and then some more mature women that have worked for a while, and that is really why I pursued this, was to have this opportunity. Now that I've just turned 50, the tables kind of turn. You're always sort of looking to other people for leadership and mentorship, and suddenly, I don't know if you feel like this, you suddenly realize it's not about that anymore. It's actually about me having an obligation and an opportunity to provide that for other people, what I, for years, sought out in other women.
Right. So what was that turning point, other than turning 50? I mean, I feel like in the workplace, you definitely demonstrate all of the things that you mentioned in the book in terms of the sort of the skills and the ability to finesse different situations with different types of men in the workplace. Was there any time in your career where you sort of felt that shift change to where you did feel more empowered or more confident in yourself? Like what point of that did that sort of happen for you?
It was definitely a journey. There were kind of these seminal points along the way, and sometimes it was when maybe I almost had to take a step back, maybe through an acquisition or an organizational change, and then each time sort of thought about digging in and then how I was going to achieve the next big thing, and then looking back and saying, okay, what were the things I did at those seminal points that really made a difference? And not just at those big points in time, but then it's, your career is sort of a collection of all of these little interactions, and so what is it about the people that really do it well and people that maybe I struggle with it a little more? And
let me just interject for a second. So I was really fascinated by the presentation today and the book as well because, coming from a male perspective, right, I found it kind of refreshing that you take on just the truth that, hey, if you're going to be a successful person at work, especially a successful woman at work in your career, you're going to deal with a lot of men, and you're going to need to know how to deal with the men, not just, you've got to get along with men. That's not really interesting advice and kind of not helpful, but here's the types of men that I've dealt with in my career, and here's my recommendations how to best navigate your way, and not just navigate your way through, but succeed by dealing with these different types of men. Maybe you could share a little bit about what led you to the path of, I'd like to sort of divide the world of men, especially into these groups, and to help me. Is it just something you learned to help you understand and navigate your own way?
I'm glad you picked up on that, because when I embarked on this, I wanted it to be something that wasn't like anything that's out there.
Yeah, I've never seen that before.
There's plenty of career advice for women, and it's funny because it's such an honest. Once you sort of look at it, I think everybody in the room was saying, "Oh, wow, how come we've never talked about it this way?" And also, I think one of the things that's surprising for people is how pro-male it is. It's not all women are great and all men are terrible. It really is. We're all nuanced. There are good and bad guys or good and bad gals, and so it's more about being sort of clear about what motivates people. And getting a better sense of that, what drives certain people, and then how to be effective with them based on that reality. And really giving a nod to, of all the 7 types, every one of them has strengths and weaknesses, just like we all do. And so giving a nod to the good parts that exist in each of these types, and how you can build a rapport with them, how you can team up with them to provide complementary skills around a project. And one of the things, I think that we've all learned through our careers is that I started, when I was younger, I thought intelligence was binary. Like, you're either smart or you're not smart. And I think that's one of the most amazing things about working in tech, is you see this incredible continuum from the engineers all the way out to the sales leadership and feet on the street and everything in between. And that's just such an amazingly awesome part of working in tech, and seeing that diversity of personality types and the portfolio that is required with all of those skill sets to really make things work. And I just felt like there was an opportunity to sort of stop and capture that. And I mean, the interesting thing is, for the types, you could probably map women into those personality types as well.
I was thinking the same thing. So,
yeah.
Can I divide the women up? Not divide. I don't want to say the word divide, because the other thing I was thinking about when I was watching the presentation was, it really isn't about dividing or placing groups in opposition, either men versus women or just these different groups. It was more about organizing and classifying for the purposes of better understanding. Right? Yeah. And that's what I thought was cool too. It wasn't about like some of those other systems that people know about. They seem like, well, if you're this type, you can only work with that other type, and this type will repel you, and that's not what you're talking about
You need
at all.
all of them, in one way or another to have everything work well. The other thing in the book, too, that seemed to resonate, I thought the men at work piece would be intriguing to people, because, like you said, it hasn't been done before, which is kind of fun to look at it that way. And we map them to movie characters, because when you don't have a lot of time to kind of get people's heads around the types, that was a way most people were familiar with all of those characters we talked about. But what was interesting in the comments of the women that came up to me after was how important some of the other commentary was around the focus on what you can do to be your best self. And so not just understanding other people, but really focusing on your effectiveness, your appearance, your voice, the way you project yourself, your presence and your personal brand. And really, I think a lot of people underestimate the importance of that. And kind of talking about, it's not enough to be the smartest person in the room. It's not enough to be right. We've all been in situations where we were proven right over time, but in the moment, nobody heard it for one reason or another. And so I think the opportunity to kind of look at those situations differently and make sure that all of the great stuff that's on the inside is recognized, is paid attention to, is heard, by really maximizing all of the things that are on the outside. In fact, one of the things I said to somebody, it's almost like that stuff we think of as being superficial is a gauntlet for people getting to the meaningful stuff. And people may like it or not like it, but it really is human nature. And one of the things I kind of just talk about is because I think I'm assuming that some people, when they're hearing it at first, think, well, people shouldn't be that way. But
that's not fair. Right.
When you challenge them and say, well, have you ever been to the grocery store and picked one type of cheese over another, or one type of wine over another because of its label, its color, its shape? Yeah. It's just human nature. We've all sat in audiences.
Nobody picks out the misshapen tomato,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
That one stays there, and you pick the rounder, better one,
right? Or whatever it is, and even just with people. I mean, we're constantly evaluating who is worth listening to, who do we trust, who do we want to spend our time with, who do we want to collaborate with. And so those are all, there's lots of different pieces of your puzzle that add up to that working for you as the best it can, or maybe it getting in your way.
Let me ask you this. One of the things you touched on earlier was around the sort of the skills and being able to sort of have complementary skills to yours. So regardless of what type you are, if you were one of the 7 male leaders, being able to have someone that works in a way that is complementary to the way you work.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice for maybe either young women or women who've been in business for quite a while where maybe they're not being honest about their own style? Because sometimes it's, you know, it might be embarrassing to think, well, maybe I am a little aggressive or I am a little timid or whatnot. How have you found, obviously maybe just pick one type of leader that you've worked with in your career, how have you found that ability to kind of evaluate yourself and find that compatibility?
I think one of the biggest challenge types for me has been the alpha dog, and of the 7 types, we start with dynamic executive and alpha dog, and then there are other types. And I think the alpha dog is just, we all know them. They're very strong personalities. They're almost hyperbolic. They're competitive. They're Machiavellian. And I think when you're young and you end up in the room with these guys, and there's a lot of times a lot of noise, and things get said, and it's frustrating. And I think when I was younger, I would just say, that guy's wrong, and he's a bad guy, and so I'm just not going to deal with him. And I think for me to have that epiphany point where I realized I was sort of framing it up all wrong, that instead it was really, my challenge was to figure out how to be successful with him. And even though they may not always be right, they might be loud about not being right, all those things, that in the end I had to figure out, I had to appreciate what their strengths, and there are many, 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 and just completely change the way that I engaged and endear myself to them. Like, why make them someone that they want to do business with? And then once you're in a different a mode of communicating and engaging with them, they will be your biggest advocates. The funny thing is, because they're really challenging and they're hyperbolic, if you are not on their team, they're going to be standing in your way. But the minute you are on their team, they're your biggest cheerleader. Mm-hmm. They're the ones going to the CEO or the other members of the executive team or other influencers, and they will throw themselves on the track for you in a way that really none of the other types will. So, I mean, the other interesting thing that I kind of talk about in the books, particularly related to this type, is that there were a few times where in a reorg or an acquisition, I ended up working for someone that at first I thought, this guy hates women. And, this is not going to work, And then it couldn't have ended up being more different. And that same guy called me maybe 3 months into working for him and said, no one has ever done something for me that I didn't ask them to do, just showed up with something amazing. And then from that point on, he still calls me every year on the same day. He said, this is the day that I call my favorite people and just let you know I'm thinking about you, and I'm grateful that I had you in my career, in my life. And had you told me that was going to be the case when I first started working for him, I never would have anticipated. I learned he was just like this character out of a movie. I mean, this Breaking Bad, goatee, 2 packs a day, really, really hard-charging, drove a Harley guy, and he just had more of an impact on me than anyone. And meanwhile, I had other bosses that on the surface seemed like really good guys that in the end really didn't advocate for me. And so I think the lesson from that is that people and things and relationships don't always turn out the way they seem, and so I think the opportunity to read the nuance in it and make the best of it, given that, is really some new way to think about it.
I think it's interesting that it took learning it from a man who was that way, right? So different from you, turns out to be one of the best relationships from a work perspective that you've had.
Right.
So, I mean, really unique that works out like that.
I know. So. I need to call him, let him know.
You do. You
just had such an impact on me. Good. It is funny. Like, I think we all end up with voices inside our heads, that pop in every now and then, and especially when you get to this age and you look back, it's interesting what sticks, and some of what stuck the most in some cases, were the things that I bristled at the most when I heard them when I was young. And then when you first, you say, oh, that's not right, but then over time, you say, that may have been extremely honest or brutally honest, but in the end, I was just so grateful for that. And I think that has influenced kind of, I think, the way that I try to work with other people too on our team. I think it's interesting when you end up in a position where that culture isn't being set by someone else, you're in the position of setting that culture. It's a weird point because it sort of sneaks up on you, and I think what you were talking about the optimized portfolio too, I think so many people sometimes get threatened by other people who are good at things that they're not and think that that's somehow going to take away from them. And I think to really change the thought process, especially when you're in a position of leadership or to set the tone of really relishing that people are good at things that you're not, and just surrounding yourself by that, and because they're going to make you better, they're going to make everything your team is doing better, and also realizing that you're there to be in the service of them. I think that's one thing I really shifted on the last couple of years, from saying, oh, it's about driving all of these things and these teams, to my role is to be in the service of helping all of these people succeed. And it seems subtle, but it actually has been a really concrete, significant thing in the way that I try to think about interacting with my team.
Right. If you're thinking about, I'm going to focus on the success of people, then the success of the organization,
just
by extension, should
natural
follow. Right? That's what should
exactly.
happen.
Right.
If you focus on the success of the organization or project task completion, you might be successful. You might complete projects or tasks, but my suspicion is that's probably not sustainable, or at least with those same people, because you'll burn them out, or you'll drive them crazy, or they'll come to hate you, and maybe eventually you'll realize, oh wow, what happened to that person who was so good at X, Y, or Z and getting this done, and now they're not doing it, or they left us, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a really important difference. It's subtle, you're right, but it's
well,
a really
the difference
important
is
shift.
that, so working on Christina's team, she empowers each of us. Now, that can be a double-edged sword, right? If you're not someone who is willing to step up or has ever been asked to step up in the past, you're going to be pretty visible, I would think, if you don't. But for those that really want to, it gives you such feeling of empowerment, because you want to do it for all the right reasons, and you don't feel like there's this weird competition as much as maybe in some other jobs. So I don't know. It's a good lesson, I think, to be thinking about. It filters down too. You develop your team members on down the line in the same way. It's always about, I've always found if you focus on highlighting someone on your team and the good work they do, it does eventually circle back to you, right? Because you're being a good leader of that person, giving them opportunities. So yeah, definitely when I think back to the people in my life who have mentored me, it typically was men. It was some that would make other people bristle, or that they found too aggressive or just intimidating, right? You hear that one a lot with some really good male leaders. And that's a delicate thing, I think, for women to balance, because you don't want to be intimidating, but you don't want to be too soft. It's trying to figure out how do you make that in between phase. But really, it's as long as you're empowering others, then I find it, I don't even worry about all those other factors, just sort of fall away. It's not important.
It is, and it's interesting too. I think it's always hard to give people direct feedback too, and we're at an HR conference, so it's interesting, like the concept of reviewing people and how that's sort of evolved and how you want to choose to do it. And more and more, it's always hard to have hard conversations. But one of the things I started to realize, and it was an article, it was about the time I was thinking about it, I saw some woman who was saying the biggest favor that you can do is actually provide really frank criticism sometimes. And in the moment where someone can actually do something about it, because, and I've seen that play out, there's, those conversations, there's anxiety on my part on kind of confronting it. Over time it's gotten, because I see the positive impact it has, because, and really people are glad when they have, wow, I didn't necessarily know I was perceived that way. I didn't see it. And I think I've seen in my own career, there are times where you sort of went sideways with someone, but they weren't, you don't know why. And so there's nothing maybe that you could do about it. So it's interesting to just kind of think about that too in the context of all all of this. And also, for me, I really wanted to be clear that this should be about focusing on what you can control.
Right.
And I kind of mentioned that a couple of times on stage, and too often actually people don't. It's kind of generalizations, or everything is this way or everything's that way. And I think in the end, what you can control is being the best person you can, and being very specific about the things that you're going to work on to do that, and then sort of see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think maybe the last thing maybe we should talk about is kind of, where's this going, right? You mentioned there's 3 books coming and more to come from that. And I've even heard you talking before we started recording, other plans you've got. This is pretty amazing what's happening. So maybe talk a little bit about where this is going, and then how folks certainly can find out more.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this on stage too. I never thought that this would actually see the light of day. It was a lonely hotel room project. As a woman traveling on the road who doesn't watch TV, I just did it sort of as an outlet. And then as I talked to more and more women, it just took on a life of its own, which ended up spawning the other 2 books that were initially chapters, and one's focused on creating your own personal brand and maximizing that as an important factor, along with navigating gender dynamics. And then the last is called Babies at Work. And I'm co-writing it with my physician around navigating all of those years when you're trying to figure out work and family.
Right.
And I actually think that's probably going to be the best book, because it's going to go deep and specific as a guide for young women. And beyond that, we've started 3 initiatives that are in various phases. They're all out there on the site, but the first one that is probably the most active is called Women Helping Women, and we all work kind of virtually now, and a lot of us are traveling. People are really busy. Also, I had a woman come up to me at the end of the session who's in the transportation business, and she said there's so few women in this role, in this industry, but I know there are others out there in other parts of the country. So the internet gives us this amazing platform to have these virtual connections, mentoring, and other kinds of groups that can ask each other questions. And so Women Helping Women is focused on people like me who want to give back, but I can't make any kind of long-term commitment around mentoring somebody. Right. So we've introduced this concept of office hours. So people like Trish or me, or I have a couple of women who are physicians, a couple who are lawyers, all different professions, CFOs and accountants, have made themselves available to be mentors around, again, all these different professions. And then younger women can come and sign up for office hours with us on demand. So it's called Giving Market. It's such a simple thing, but I love business supply and demand economics. So we're calling it Giving Marketplace, but we literally have language around, there's supply, and they're mentors, and then there's demand. They're young women who are looking for guidance. And so that will be our first big initiative. And then we have something called Women at Workouts. Fitness for me, and sort of the physical, cognitive, and emotional strength that it has given me has been such a huge factor in my career. And I wasn't going to include it because I felt like there was so much out there already, but so many women, when we did our beta, were looking for that. And so I've partnered with a woman who's just a phenomenal personal trainer and just a good holistic health and strength person. And she and I together, it's called Women at Workouts, which is a lot of fun. And it already has a lot of neat content, but we're going to be expanding that and over the next few months. And then the last thing that is going to be the hardest to execute, but I think it's going to be the most valuable, is something called Women at Workshops. And basically, the tagline is One Day MBA. Okay. There are a lot of, initially I was thinking that it would be useful for emerging women who were maybe I talked to Jill Biden. I had an opportunity to meet her recently. She's very focused on community college education. And she said, gosh, this would be such a great thing to round out my students that are getting a basic degree in English, undergraduate in English. But then the more I talked to women who were even pretty advanced in their careers, lawyers, physicians, even women in tech and the business environment, had sort of skipped over this sort of basic macroeconomics, basic accounting, investments, finance. So this opportunity, I think, to get women together for a day and cycle through, okay, give me each of these classes on one piece of paper, and then open up a series of conversations around these topics from the books. I think there's something really interesting there. And in addition to that, we'll probably have kind of an online, on-demand platform for that One Day MBA as well.
Wow, it's exciting.
It's been a lot of fun.
I mean, can you imagine? She does all of this. She's a wonderful mother, right? Can you at least mention your family, right?
I have
All the
great
boys, and
They put up with me.
she's two teenage
locker room.
boys. Yeah, but she's at their events. She's supporting what they're doing. I think it's, we all sort of dream to be that person that is truly able to juggle all of that. I won't say balance it, but juggle it at different times. So I think, for that reason, you're not only a good mentor for me and our colleagues at Infor, but you're a good mentor for all of these women, both who are more junior coming out of college, younger women like my daughter or some of the other younger women that are looking up to you already, and then those of us that are maybe been in business for quite a while and need someone to just say, yeah, what you're doing works and it's okay. I think because sometimes we feel like we're an island. So I think what Christina's value is that Christina sort of brings everyone
All
to the
these women
same
who
island.
felt like islands.
Right.
That was what was so great
Yeah.
about the launch party. There were 40 women, some younger, but the ones of us who were over 40, it was so neat because we would not have it any other way. But there are times that you've taken the road less traveled in a lot of cases, and it is lonely. And so it was neat to find that camaraderie, and if this can serve as a platform for doing that, that's really all I want out of it. And so anyway, and Trish, you're the same way. I mean, you've just led an extraordinary career, and so it's I think the fun is just starting.
More to come, right? We need to have her back on the show.
And yeah, we do. And the website is for folks?
It's womenatwork.com. It's WOMENATWORK.
So all the information is there, the books are there, these programs you're talking about, everything's there.
Actually, some really cool we have
Some merch?
downloadable worksheets
Nice.
and a journal and really neat T-shirts.
And she's on Instagram. Follow them on Instagram.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. And we'll be adding, I think we're going to add a fitness bag and some other really cool stuff. Cool. It's going to be fun.
Christina Van Houten, thank you so much for
Thanks for having me.
being here.
Thanks
for being our first HR Happy Hour video guest.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
Right? Yeah, I
Well,
think so.
yes, yeah.
Let's call it that
Absolutely.
anyway.
Yeah, and I'm really grateful for the whole opportunity you've given me at the show. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for being a part of the show. It's fantastic. Trish, this has been super fun.
I know, right? We should do this more
We
often.
We should work that out.
Well, we have the ability. We have a show, so
that's
let's
true.
keep
We
it going,
do.
right? This is easy. This is the easy stuff.
yeah.
We need to offline. We need to figure out what male archetype you are and how that.
I'm working on
Didn't
that.
you say you
I
think you
felt
want to
like
be the quiet leader?
I wanted to be the best one, of course, but I'm
They're
not
all
sure.
good.
I
There's
think
no
they're all
good or
good.
Yeah, that's
bad.
true.
Well,
I'm gonna
I
think
just said it
about
was
that.
my favorite
Why don't we
type,
do
so
this?
Yeah, I
it's
know. I
not
was trying to
theirs.
suck up a little bit.
We have the
That's right.
book. I think it would be, maybe we do a show about that. Let's talk through, because I think we hear that a lot, just in terms of chemistry on the show. We're both pretty different in the way that we tackle
that's
things. So
probably
maybe
true.
that's
Okay.
would be like a real life case study for,
All right.
yeah.
I
that
can use
work.
the help, probably.
You don't need help. You're great just the way you are.
Well, you're too kind. So, Trish, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Christina, thanks
Thank you.
again. Great to see you guys, and thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll
HR
see you
Happy
next
Hour.
time
All
on
right.
the HR Happy Hour. What's my tagline out?
Your sign out.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.